Oh, well, thank you very, very much for having me here today. I'm excited, and I'm really excited for all of you, because by bringing together all of the different people from across Latin America to an event like this is very important. This is an opportunity over the next several days to get some new ideas and to get some new thoughts and to start thinking through what can you take home, what can you take back to your companies and your businesses, and how can you apply this information to build and to reinvent insurance going forward. So I want to make sure that this works. So again, thank you very much to Caribou. He and I talked about his presentation and what he wanted to accomplish. And the important thing to think about in this presentation is really what are some of the factors that are driving the transformation that is happening in insurance. And one thing that I want to tell all of you is that technology is creating unprecedented change that will impact insurance. This change is unavoidable. So as everybody is sitting in the room, you can know for certain that tomorrow will look very different. And 10 years from now, this whole industry will have reinvented itself. And we are all part of that transformation and reinvention. So when you think about insurance, you want to think about why is it important. This is an industry that I love. I've known it for 25 years. I'm a technologist. I'm a physicist. I'm an entrepreneur. I've been a CEO of a publicly traded company. And for the last 20 years, I've been an investor in this space. And the reason is because insurance is about protecting the things we love. Our home, our family, our life. It is a bedrock of society. We can't be in this building. We can't be in an airplane. We can't travel to see people without insurance. It's fundamental. And that's the most important thing. What we as an industry provide is fundamental. But this industry is undergoing an incredible change. And it's a very important magnitude. And I'm here coming from the US, coming from New York, down to Brazil. And the reason I'm here is because this is a change that's important. And as I said earlier, it's not avoidable. You can't cover your eyes and say it will go away. Because what has happened is over the past 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, over the past several years, about $13 billion US has been invested into software and technology companies whose purpose is to transform this industry. That's a phenomenal amount of money, $13 billion. Anybody in the audience who's from an insurance company, every one of you has a budget for technology spend, and the majority of that budget is to keep the operations going. It's not new. And what's happening in this industry is you have all of this that's going to create new. And if you look at society, there's in history, it's called a Cambrian or a Precambrian explosion of life form. Precambrian meaning at one point nothing was in the sea and suddenly everything was in the sea. That's what's happening in insurance today. These are examples of just a small number of companies that are receiving capital. Most of you have heard of some of these companies. Over here is Lemonade, very successful. You've got CoverWallet, Policy Genius, In life insurance, you have ladder. You've got a company here, Right and Dem, that's doing digital claims. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of companies that are being funded. And why is that? It's because they're trying to transform the industry and take it into the next generation. Now, not all of these companies will succeed, but the point is that money is coming in to be invested. The other thing which is important is that it's not just startups, but you have established companies, big, very large companies, that are trying to understand. Like Alibaba is partnering with Ping An Insurance. That's the largest insurance company, not only in China, but the largest in the world, right? To deliver insurance products and services seamlessly at the point of sale. So this is a transformation that will impact everybody in the room, because insurance is changing in ways that are never before seen. This is the most exciting time ever to be in this industry. It's the most exciting time because money's being invested into technology that can change and transform the industry. Now, in Latin America, you're seeing the changes, right? This is a good graph. You're seeing the level of funding. You're seeing the level of funding for insurance, software, technology companies going up in Latin America for entrepreneurship. Now, what's important is to realize that those companies are trying to solve problems in a way that can create competitive advantage. So if you're with a broker, you want to look at this and say, how will my business change? If you're with an insurer, you want to say, what will be the impact? What will my competitors do? Are my competitors innovating faster than we are? Now, I want to point out one of the exciting things here is you have the Latin American INSURTECH Fund. And I love that because the vision of Eduardo Iglesias is to create something that's pan-Latin America, that is to eliminate borders. I am extremely excited by the fact that Gustavo has created this not just as a Brazil-centric conference, but it's something that he's trying to invite people from all across Latin America. Now, the good news is you want to see cross-pollination. So just like Gustavo said, coming up to events like ITC in Las Vegas are great opportunities. Over 3 and 4 days, very efficiently, you can see 100, 200 companies and come up with ideas to transform your business. And that's the essence of what today's talk is about. So the idea is that change is inevitable, and the question is whether you surf with the change or you get drowned by the wave. So that's really what it comes out to. You're either going to ride the wave and be successful, or you're going to get buried in the water, right? Now, insurance as an industry is not really used to innovation. This is an industry that has not embraced and held innovation as their priority, right? When they try to predict, they do it mortality, morbidity, right? They look at probability of risk, but they don't really look outside of that to realize the pace of change. So the rest of this talk is to look at some technology changes and to say that those changes will change insurance, and it's important for insurance companies to realize that inevitable change, it's important to get in front of it and to think, what is the implication for business? So this purpose of today is not to scare, not really to inspire, but really to provoke and stimulate the thinking and to give you some technical examples. Now, I will tell you what the last slide of this presentation is. The last slide is software and technology is not going away. When Gustavo showed you the experience of walking into an Amazon Go store, and he walked in, and he grabbed a soda, and he walked out, and he didn't take his money out of his pocket, that transformation is happening today. As a professional investor, again, I've been investing for 20 years, right, in software and technology. I can tell you that virtually none of the companies that we see have radical new ideas. They're just applying ideas to insurance. That's the crazy thing. The risk for us is in execution, not in the software and technology. Okay, so last year at this event, Caribou explained 3 forces of technology change. Technology can eliminate friction, so things go faster. Technology can make things more transparent, so you can see what's happening, and in some cases in real time. And lastly, you see this last thing, which is this curve is very important, which is technology can drive down costs. So remember, insurance often looks at morbidity and mortality and the likelihood, the probability of things. But this curve here, as investors in technology in Silicon Valley, I can tell you that that curve is where incredible things will happen. So that curve is the cost curve. That curve is when costs move lower and it becomes less and less and less expensive to do things. Amazing things happen. When I started my first company, it was to underwrite credit cards. And I would create the biggest database I could, and the first thing that I had to do was buy hardware. And it cost me $20 million US. I had to raise money to buy a piece of hardware. Today, I can get 1,000 times the size of that database, and I stick it in the Amazon cloud, and it costs me like pennies, right? It's a cost curve phenomenon. So what happens when costs move dramatically lower? And it creates an opportunity for transformation, for going from a tadpole to a frog, going from a caterpillar to a butterfly, right? A radical transformation. And think about this metaphor in insurance. How can insurance transform itself to be integrated into our life seamlessly and something that can happen effortlessly? And companies are thinking about that transformation. Now, I suspect that Gustavo is wondering why we're talking about tadpoles. But again, the reason is to talk about the transformation, is talk about what we can create, to talk about potential, to talk about things that have never existed before. And we're seeing that. And the opportunity for everybody in the room is to participate. The fact that you're here today says your mind is open for new ideas. The fact that people have flown in from all across the world says that people want to exchange ideas. The beauty of insurance is we exchange ideas, we communicate, we talk, we interact, we connect. We realize insurance fundamentally is an interconnected product. The question becomes, how will we transform? So technically, I think it's fairly important just to say we're going to talk about these cost curves going down, and it's important for insurance to ask themselves, what's the implication? So first off, there's one huge trend which is going from a transistor. This is an on-off switch. For anybody who knows software, this is 0 and 1. Right there, in that little piece of metal and plastic, is encoding 0 and 1. And 0 and 1 is what makes software run. That's it. But then you have to be able to store information, and then most importantly, you have to transmit and communicate information. I was looking at a company, and we'll show you a slide of it, that from space, from satellites, they're looking down on the roofs of houses in California, and they can tell you the age of the roof. Like, that's mental, right? That might not translate. That's crazy, right? It's lunacy, but from space you have that information. So this is a cost curve. There was a very famous engineer who came up, it's called Moore's Law, this is Gordon Moore, who came up with the theory which said the number, basically the computing power increases or the cost decrease every 24 months. So you can get more and more and more information onto your chips and technology. That's very important because what happens when cost curves drop is cloud computing, you can see, goes down, mobile broadband costs go down, sensors, these are IoT. This is the sensor that could be in your washer. The sensor could be, by the way, in the US, in property, biggest cost of loss costs is burst water pipes. Because we don't have always warm weather. It gets really cold and suddenly, boom, a pipe bursts, and suddenly you have a $50,000 property claim, right? Sensors can be used to detect that and to cut and reduce the claims cost. So you see these curves going down. Now, an example that is relevant for anybody here who's involved with life, there might be people here, have you heard of Vitality? You know, the program, it's very important. It's, came out of South Africa. It's a fantastic program that's being rolled out the world. The fact is we as an industry need to do better at providing not only health and life insurance, but also getting into prevention, right? We have to make this shift from protection to prevention. This change in the genome is a change that will transform this industry, and it's really good for anybody who writes life and health to know and to dedicate resources to this, because the cost curve is going down to essentially zero. In fact, the cost of sequencing the genome is going down faster than Moore's Law, and this is actually a bit frightening, but it's understandable, is because when computing power and storage is used to solve other problems and their costs are going down, you get A times B becomes exponential. Your costs are driving down exponentially. This factor will transform life and health, because if you look in 2025, the cost to sequence a full genome will be $1. With that information, the number of applications and products and opportunities is astounding. As an investor, we look at that and say, wow, let's find the right management team, the right company, the right partners, the right distribution, because we'll make money when that happens. And it gets better. Because what's even happening now is this concept. It's free. One of the things that's happening is that people are realizing, and certainly investors like EOS, we're realizing if we can support a company to give their technology away for free, it reduces a barrier in sales costs, and it gets distributed quickly, which means we can start collecting data. And so, as an investor, I'm actually, we're closing an investment today or tomorrow. We're in legal, and we're backing a company that does sports insurance, sports risk. And one of the key parts of our investment thesis is we're giving their software away to non-professional universities, schools, churches, athletic organizations for free. Because if we can make it ubiquitous, guess what? We can start creating data. And that's where you go from a caterpillar to a butterfly, from a tadpole to a frog. When people from the outside the industry start thinking, hey, if I give something away for free, I can start collecting data and I can create new products and new channels. And the key here is that is happening. I'm going to go back to the earlier chart where 12, 13, 14 billion dollars comes from people like me into INSURTECH so that we can create new products and services and companies. Right? So that's the circle, right? Insurance needs to change. The vector of change is costs coming down and then outside money coming in, and that will allow the industry to reinvent itself certainly over the next decade. Okay. I told you that the last slide, and this is not it, but the last slide is about software and technology. When you look into your organizations, it's important to assess how strong are the technical people in your organization. It's no longer acceptable for the CEO not to know about technology. In fact, just like I recommend going up to ITC in Las Vegas, you just go once and then you can see, wow, there's 10,000 people in insurance looking at INSURTECH. I also recommend anybody who's not been to Silicon Valley, you should talk to Gustavo, wherever Gustavo is, and maybe Gustavo can help organize a trip into Silicon Valley. Because to go into Uber, Lyft, Facebook, Google, Apple, all these companies will change your thinking about how rapidly technology is being developed. So this guy is Mark Andreessen. He is a very famous, very successful venture capitalist. When I grow up, I want to be him, maybe with a little more hair. But he is the person who said that software is eating the world. He was one of the first to recognize the changes that will happen. These changes can impact things like the broker world, where you have an on-demand, this is a company called Bold Penguin that has developed a very interesting way to facilitate and to reduce the amount of information going back and forth to get multiple quotes. We look at that and say, and the company is going to be successful. We didn't invest in it. We look at that and we say, it's part of a trend where brokers are going to become more efficient and profitable. Tomorrow, you have a chance to hear John Drizek, the president of Marsh Digital, a brilliant man, and you can tell Marsh is going to become more efficient and more profitable. The problem is that you're not going to have as many brokers. So some are going to survive, consolidate, get bigger, get more profitable. Others are going to have to find a niche or they're going to be challenged. Okay, so software is also going to change the legal profession. So to get a will in the United States, a will is, if you die, what happens to your estate, who gets what. Lawyers charge $400 an hour. It might cost $400. What's happening in the industry is, guess what? People are beginning to give away the legal services around getting a will for free. The power in that is the data, though, because what's going to happen is they're going to start knowing what is happening in your life events. They know your age, your family, your beneficiaries. They might know your business, size of your assets, and they can give away a will. Not that hard to do, but they can start coming up with new products and new services. Okay, the next big trend, again, the cost curves are coming down, is around AI, which is artificial intelligence. So, firstly, artificial intelligence and the whole technology around it has been around since 1985. 1985. Insurance is just getting to it. It's only taken 40 years. Artificial intelligence is not new. The computational power, that the cost curves, the fact that you can store more information, that lets new things happen. At EOS, we probably talked to 200 insurance companies around the world and everywhere. US, North America, Europe, Spain, UK. Very few are in front of this phenomenon. Most are behind. Chubb Insurance, you might have heard of Chubb. Chubb is ahead of the curve. Allianz is ahead of the curve. Ping An is ahead of the curve. Most of the insurance companies in the US are behind the curve. They can't even find the talent to be able to do that. Simple applications. This is a Latin American company. There's great applications. Some of them are simple, like reading policies to find inconsistencies. Humans, it's not ideal for us, but for software like AI, it's fantastic. I mentioned to you satellite imagery, being able to do property analytics to read what's going on in a roof in a set of houses. This technology and the use of satellites was funded by the military, right? The military wants to know where things are in the world, but as costs come down, as satellites become cheaper, storage becomes cheaper, as analytics become cheaper, you can start taking this into the commercial world, and you can start looking at things like understanding the roofs and the impact on property insurance. It's a phenomenal use case. Very easy. It's extraordinary what can be done there. One of the things that's interesting in AI, and you'll notice the curve is going this way, is that over the last several years, they run tests to test a computer versus a human. And you will see that what's happened in the last 2 years, 3 years, is that computers can now outperform humans consistently in a number of tasks. Not just easy chess. So what happens when that happens is you're going to start seeing robotics. You're going to start seeing underwriting changing. Because I will tell you, a computer is more accurate for certain types of risks than a human, right? It's going to change claims. It will change first notice of loss. It will change when they start putting cameras, requiring putting cameras in your car, and you get into an accident. It's going to reduce the amount of fraud dramatically. One of the companies here, Friss. If you haven't met that company, you should say hello to them. They're doing fantastic things in fraud analytics. Okay, our industry is changing, is going from a tadpole to a frog. I don't really want to be a frog, but from a caterpillar to a butterfly. Right? We're in a process of transformation. This is a fantastic book that comes out of 3 professors in Toronto who basically looked at what happens when the costs of making a prediction follows that curve. Now, I will tell you, I'm based in Philadelphia. It's a small city near New York. People don't get shot in Philadelphia as much as other parts. But I travel a lot to different parts of the world to see technology with my own eyes and to meet the people. I spend every 90 days, I go to Israel. I go to Tel Aviv. It's probably the smallest concentration of entrepreneurship in the world. It's extraordinary. I go to Silicon Valley every 6 weeks, and I go to Toronto, where these guys are, every 6 weeks. Toronto, Canada, and Montreal, Canada, is now a hotbed of AI and machine learning. It's amazing. The cost of an engineer in Toronto is half of the cost of a similar engineer in Silicon Valley. So you have to go up there. Eduardo, I mentioned I want you to, for your Latin America fund, I'm taking you to Toronto because some of the best seed investors and venture investors are beginning to look in that market. Okay, this is not a cost curve phenomenon. This is about APIs. APIs basically how you connect to something else. This is a very important phenomenon because this is happening today, and everything in insurance is going to be impacted by the ability to connect an ecosystem. And it's happening today, and basically what an API does is it lets like a broker connect to an insurance company so it can serve a client. API makes that easier, very inexpensive, almost free to do. But the problem is brokers are going to have to find a way to differentiate themselves. Now, Marsh, for those of you who know Marsh has an initiative called Bluestream. Marsh is smart. Bluestream is brilliant. It's a way for them to stay relevant by adding value around these connections. This is happening today. I'm going to go to the next slide because it's easier. This is a company called Buddy. And if you are doing mountain biking or athletic or doing sports, surfing, skiing, things like that, you can get on-demand insurance, on demand. And it's boom, you're covered right when you're doing it. And you get an extra coverage while you're doing something that's a little bit more dangerous. Right? And that's the way insurance will be embedded in our life, and we're going to be able to go swipe left, swipe right to be able to buy it. And that's how you need to think about distribution. Okay. Our friends at Lemonade. Now, tomorrow I have another talk, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Lemonade, but let me give you a preview. Lemonade are a bunch of guys from Israel who teamed up with some guys from Liberty to create a company in Silicon Valley that is driven by AI. That's the short story. It's a little more complicated. They start writing renter's insurance. So when you rent a house, not own it, you rent a house, and their losses were high, and everybody's making fun of them and stuff like that. But they're very, 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 very smart. Because the cost of acquisition for renter's insurance is tiny. And if you can move your population who rent a house to the ones who own a house, when you move them to homeowners insurance, you own that relationship for the next 25 years. They're brilliant. And guess what? They just raised $300 million at a $2 billion valuation. They're writing $50 million in premium. So all of us can sit in this room and say, really? $2 billion for $50 million in premium? And who knows? I don't have a crystal ball. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. But that's an example of the transformation that will hit everybody in the room. Which really comes up to some of the last things. This part was to challenge your thinking around cost curves, transformation. Last slide, which is, it's about the importance of technology. Which is kind of hard, right? Because technology sometimes is difficult to understand. If anybody like me, I've been CEO and I've had to pay for technology projects and they're late, it's frustrating, right? Sometimes the technology people don't understand business. But if you can create a culture which brings business and technology together, you will outperform your competition. If you have an opportunity to take your management team to Silicon Valley for 2-3 days, it will change your thinking. If you go to Israel, Tel Aviv, for 2 or 3 days, it will change your thinking. Because you will see an extraordinary amount of transformation that's driven by technology. Now, again, I've been investing for 20 years. I'm here for the next 2 days. I spend 50% of my time traveling the world, looking at technology, talking to CEOs of insurance companies and brokers, trying to understand. So if at any time over the next 2 days you have questions, please feel free to come up to me, right? Because we want to network. I'm anything, any ideas, happy to help. I am very grateful to be here today. I'm grateful for all of you for coming, and I'm grateful for the sponsors who have made this possible. And I want to thank you for your attention.